Going on, everybody? It's Young Man. Today is March 12th, 2026. Today we're going to be talking about Bitcoin, strategy, and MetaPlanet. These are the three things that we've been talking about and will continue to talk about. So, today, the topic I want to discuss is Bitcoin at the end of time. Bitcoin and how it relates to time and how it relates to time running out. In theory, if time were running out, how would this impact Bitcoin? How would it impact a person's willingness to pay for Bitcoin and the general demand and role that Bitcoin has? So, a couple of ideas I want to talk about are if we think about human nature and if we think about human as part, the human being as part of nature and more of an animal than whatever it is that we think of ourselves as. We can think about the way an animal judges what it needs and how badly it needs it. So if you think about a squirrel collecting acorns, a bird collecting brush for its nest, these are things that they know they need, but they're in some way they're judging how badly they need it. I would argue that the main factor that goes into these decisions is how much time they have to gather these things. An animal that needs to collect food to feed itself and its family, they're judging how badly they need that food by how much time they have to get it. Because there are times when they know they need food, but they don't immediately go out and get the food. But then there are times when they know they need food and they're going to stop what they're doing to go get the food. What impacts that decision is time. And it's the same thing for us. People are willing to pay more for something as time expires to get it. If you get tickets for an event that's a year from now, you likely will pay less than the person that gets tickets for the same event one day before because they know they're running out of time. The product that they want is becoming more scarce. And even if the amount of food in the animal's environment is not becoming more scarce, the time to acquire it is becoming more scarce. So, in a way, the food is becoming more scarce. Their ability to attain the food is going down as time passes. That's basic. These are basic ideas, but I don't think people consider that, and they don't consider it when it comes to things like supply and demand for a scarce asset like Bitcoin. Bitcoin has 21 million coins. It's coded to have a scarce and fixed supply. There will never be more coins made. So as time continues, whether there are less coins on the market or not, there's less time for the 8 billion people on this planet to get some of it. So we have the supply decreasing while the amount of time available to attain it is decreasing. And these play into each other, whether they're separate or they're a cause, they have a causal effect, a cause effect relationship to each other. Sorry, tripping on my words. Whether or not they're correlated, they play into each other. And they likely are correlated, but they're not, they don't depend on each other. Time moves forward and we have less time to acquire Bitcoin. If you look at the history of Bitcoin, that is the conclusion that you come to because more and more and more of the supply is owned by somebody. So, what is this going to look like when we not only have less time to acquire Bitcoin, but in many people's minds, they have less time to acquire a secure future? Because if you look around, it seems that there's an overwhelming feeling that people have less time to create a secure future for themselves. And an extreme example of this is that in many places outside of the United States and in many places within the United States, the economic factors that are pressing against people's lives and ways of life are forcing them to make decisions a couple days out because they don't know how much time they have. And what they do is to ensure that they have another day. It's when you're operating in survival mode, you are going to do what you have to do to secure your future. And when your future is such a short term, these decisions look differently than if they're not. And an extreme example I can give of things that are happening right now is the people in Iran who the United States just declared war against, essentially. Their time horizon likely changed from a long time horizon. They make decisions for themselves and their family based on months and years to a shorter time horizon because the uncertainty in their life has increased exponentially. It's not a linear function. These things don't happen one, two, three, four. They happen 100 because it's not, you can't quantify it that way. If you wanted to quantify it, it would be hard. A way to quantify the uncertainty and the value of time for the people in this country would be looking at the price of Bitcoin in their currency. And if you're curious, you should look up what the price of Bitcoin in the Iranian real has done in the past year or 5 years. It's essentially 30x in a matter of days. That's what happens. That's what happens when a large military power singles you out as an enemy. And I would argue that people who live more secure lives in the United States, in Western Europe, in a lot of these places that believe that they have a cushion, I would recommend that you live more like you don't because you don't know when you might not. And what I was just mentioning about how these things don't happen in a linear fashion, they just happen gradually and then suddenly. I would recommend that you act more like the tortoise and the hare, that you do things with a long time horizon and you do the things that you would do if your time was running out. If you were uncertain about how much time you had and you could take action to maybe buy yourself more time, you would. And so if you feel comfortable and you feel like you have all the time in the world, you probably won't be putting money away to buy Bitcoin with. But if you believe in the back of your mind that you don't know how certain the times ahead are, you might be putting aside money to invest in your future in your long-term, short-term, and medium-term future. And I think that the best tool to do that is Bitcoin. And I make these videos because I believe that no matter how good things might seem for you in your individual path, there will come a time where you will have you will wish that you would have prepared for the moment that comes. Everybody's going to have a moment. Everybody's going to be faced with problems. And I hope that you're not. I hope that you live a smooth, peaceful life, but I know that the reality is that that's not how things go. Even the most comfortable people, even the most wealthy people, they come across moments where no preparation could prepare them. But there are things that you can do to prepare for the the moment that is essentially not something that you can prepare for. I think in I guess you could say financial terms, but it's not even financial terms. It's real terms. The best thing that you can do is store your time and your energy. And what we do to do that is we save money. But money's not good enough. The fiat money that we save, that most people save in, That's not safe from this because if you were a family in Iran and you were saving in the local currency for uncertainty, the value of that money was eradicated the second that missiles start falling. So it's not, you can't save in money. You have to save in something scarce. You have to save in something that has value globally. You have to save in something that is not within the physical world and cannot be taken from you. You have to save in something digital, something future oriented, and something that is like Bitcoin. I would argue that something like gold is also um, an option, but it's not as good of an option because how many times have governments came and seized gold? How many times have people not been able to move gold out of their homeland? Too many times. We've tried it and it's failed as a safe haven. Bitcoin has not failed as a safe haven yet, and I don't think it will. I make these videos because I think you have, whether you're someone that worries about your future or not, you can improve your mind state and improve the clarity that you have when you make decisions and improve your overall well-being when you feel secure and when you feel like you have time. And since I've started buying Bitcoin, since I've started saving in Bitcoin, I've noticed a shift. I've noticed a shift in the way that I think about my life and about my future. And even a shift in what I do with the time that I have today. And it's a positive shift. That's why I make these videos because I think there are people who are going through a similar experience, and I would like for there to be more. I would like for more and more people to go through that type of shift because when the day comes that you need your rainy day fund to be secure in any environment, I think Bitcoin provides that utility. And since I do like to talk about strategy and metaplanet in these videos, because I know a lot of my viewers click on these videos for commentary about these companies, I'll also add part of the value that metaplanet and strategy are going to provide is that they have the optionality of having started early. Everybody's going to be doing what they're doing. Once the cat's out of the bag that Bitcoin is the best asset and that it's the best way to save and store economic energy, they are going to have a monopoly on the thing that everybody wants. And if Bitcoin becomes money, they're going to not only have a monopoly on the asset that everybody wants, but they're going to have a monopoly on credit issued against that asset, which is more powerful. Arguably, that's more powerful because they can just attain more and more and more and more because everybody that doesn't have these things, everybody that doesn't have 700,000 Bitcoin like Michael Saylor does, is going to want to borrow money, whatever money is. They're going to want to get their hands on point 0.1 Bitcoin and they don't have millions of dollars to buy it. So they're going to go to someone like Strategy and take money from them, take debt from them. They're bond salesmen and they have all the collateral. And I don't think people understand how significant that is. If the concept of a bank that is backed by hard money, which is not something that people my age are familiar with since the gold standard hasn't existed in our lifetime, if a new, cleaner, more true, and more effective bank was created, and you knew about it before everybody knew about it, and you could buy shares of it, I can't think of any reason on earth why you wouldn't. It doesn't matter what the price is. They have a monopoly on the future. They're arbitraging time. That idea, I am still trying to wrap my head around that idea 2 years after becoming familiar with it. And So that's what I'll say about that. But finally, I worked out a way of trying to describe the idea that I'm trying to describe. Um, and that is that if you were trying to quantify how badly you want something, how badly you need to start attaining something, you would take, if food is the example, you would take how much food do you need to attain right now? And you would divide that by the time that you assume that you have to gather it. And that value would be how badly you need it. So, for example, if the time that you assume that you have to gather this food was high, if you had months, the number that this equation gives you is going to be a lot lower than if the time you assume you have to gather the food was 2 days. If the denominator, which is time, is small, the number is going to be large. That's it's a basic concept, but it's not something people think about. If the time that you had to attain Bitcoin was years, you wouldn't value how badly you need it very high. But if the time that you had to attain Bitcoin was 1 week, you would trade everything for it because you need it and you don't have time to get it. The people in the war-torn countries whose currencies lose half of what they're worth every hour, they need Bitcoin and they needed it yesterday. They don't have 2 days to get it. They would give anything for it because they needed it yesterday. They need to get the hell out of where they are with the time and energy that they've stored their whole life, and nothing allows them to do it but Bitcoin. So if that situation ever comes in your life, you're going to hope that you were buying before you needed it because it was cheap. Because if you bought it in Iran before the price in your currency 30x'd in a day, you're in better shape than if you didn't. That is the sole reason I make these videos. Because the moment of truth comes. And I just think people who prepared for things never regretted it. I never regretted preparing for a test that I did well on. And I don't believe that I'm going to regret preparing for the digitalization of money. So with that, I'm going to end the video because I could go on longer and I don't want to make this too long. I appreciate if you clicked on the video. Um, I hope everybody is doing well, and I hope whatever your circumstances are, you're not going through your moment of truth right now because all I can hope is that we have a little bit more time to prepare. So thanks again for clicking on the video, and I'll be back with another one soon.